Hey, my name is Rob Johnson. I'm a senior attorney at the Institute for Justice, and I am joined here today by IJ client Elizabeth Brokamp. Elizabeth is a Virginia licensed professional counselor, meaning she talks to people about problems in their lives in order to help them feel better. And back in December, we sued the District of Columbia on Elizabeth's behalf to uphold Elizabeth's right to talk to her clients in DC over internet video without a DC license. And today we're here to talk about a second lawsuit that we're filing against New York. And we're filing the second lawsuit in New York because Elizabeth's right to talk to her clients isn't limited to the District of Columbia. With the rise of teletherapy, professional counselors are faced with a 50-state patchwork of state licensing laws all across the country, but the First Amendment extends across the country as well. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here today. Why don't we just start by having you tell us a little bit about your practice and what it's like today?
Well, the pandemic has transferred it completely online. Prior to that, I would have been seeing people primarily in an office with some online sort of adjunctive services, but the pandemic has necessitated everyone coming online exclusively.
And were you interested in teletherapy before the pandemic started as well?
Absolutely. I've been interested in teletherapy since actually the 1990s when it wasn't even teletherapy yet, when it was just email and phone support for clients. And over the years, obviously, with distance communication exploding, it's become a much different and exciting thing.
And what are some of the advantages of teletherapy?
There's so many advantages to teletherapy, and those include flexibility, privacy for clients, convenience. They don't have a commute. They can, if they have an issue such as having just had a baby or maybe a health issue that prevents them from traveling, those can all be reasons why people would seek out telemental health.
Sure. And over the years, have you had clients who've moved away from the DC area who have moved to other states where you might have been able to talk to them in the past if you were using teletherapy?
Yes, I certainly have had a number of clients move away, and whether that's for retiring to a different state or moving for a job or even traveling for a job. There are a lot of people in the DC area that travel frequently, or going to college out of state. So I've had a number of clients, and unfortunately, even those kinds of normal changes can mean that I'm no longer legally allowed to see them.
Yeah, and so what's involved if somebody moves to a different state or is visiting another state? Like, what do you have to do to figure out if you can talk to them or not?
It's a really clunky process to try to figure out if I can speak to them. I have to check the laws in my state, and then I also have to familiarize myself with the laws in their state. And if either state doesn't allow it or only allows it for a temporary amount of time, and it conflicts with the other state, you can end up in a mess of trying to figure out really legal issues as opposed to simply counseling issues.
Sure, yeah. And so you had a client who, during the pandemic, moved from the DC area to New York. And I'll just very quickly say in New York, it's currently legal for you to talk to this client under a COVID-related waiver, but that waiver is being renewed on a month-to-month basis. So as soon as that waiver expires, it's going to be illegal for you to talk to that client. And obviously, I'm not going to ask you about any specific client, but can you just sort of generally tell us, like, what are the issues that arise when you have to end that kind of a relationship?
So ending those kinds of relationships for what I would consider arbitrary reasons, not reasons that have to do with the what's in the client's best interest, it can be anything from being inconvenient just because they have to locate another provider, and that's at a bare minimum. But the more serious risk is that you've developed a relationship with this person. They've shared really personal things. They may have shared things with you that they've never shared with anyone before. And maybe even shared traumas that they've had. And so you develop a relationship, and then all of a sudden, because of something that doesn't have anything to do with them, you have to tell them that you're no longer allowed to see them. And that feels awful, and it can be re-traumatizing for that person. Certainly not something that would go along with the code of ethics for counselors.
And I also understand that you've had somebody contact you from New York, who's currently in New York, during the pandemic asking to start working with you, and that you had to turn them down. And could you just say a bit about your thinking there?
I have had to turn them down because even though there is a COVID exemption, and the COVID exemption has been, it's been an exciting glimpse at what could be possible. But unfortunately, as you mentioned, that gets extended month to month. And so if I were to accept a client from New York now, knowing that, next month that relationship may be discontinued, I would be also operating against my code of ethics and risk harm to the client, which I'm not willing to do.
Now, some people may be listening and might say, well, why don't you just get a New York license? And what would you say to that?
I would say it sounds easy, but it's not easy at all. Unfortunately, because all 50 states and different localities have different licensing laws. You're talking about 50 different application fees, 50 different application processes that are can be very convoluted, require years and years of paperwork and things like that. It's just not tenable to do that across the United States for one counselor.
What are you hoping to accomplish with the upcoming lawsuit in New York?
Well, on a basic level, I just want to point out how arbitrary and outdated the laws are regarding telemental health, especially. But on a more important level, to me, it's a real act of advocacy for me to say to my clients, look, I'm willing to fight for this relationship with you and for you. And I would like to fight for the ability to continue working with them. And then, of course, I hope that it's a precedent that other therapists and their clients can use so that we can continue to provide really good care, regardless of what our clients choose to do, move, or have other life changes that necessitate that they leave the area.
Well, on our behalf, thank you for being part of this battle with us, and thank you for joining us to talk about this today.
Thank you so much for representing me. I appreciate it.